It was supposed to be a throwaway Tuesday, the kind of morning where coffee cools in paper cups and people forget the bus number by the time they badge into work. But halfway across the river span, the day folded in on itself, a white delivery truck snapped sideways, a compact brake to hard, a second car clipped the first, and in under 4 heartbeats the lanes turned into a lattice of steel, glass, and noise. Bus 91 bucked as the driver Iden Cole, 46, steady hands, quieter than the radio, squeezed the brake and held the line straight against the rail, bringing 80-some strangers to a clean stop 3 lengths short of disaster. Phones came up, panic crackled like static, and for a second the bridge was all horn and fear until Iden clicked the hazards, stood, and let the voice he'd learned on bad roads years ago shoulder the room. Everybody stay seated. Front to rows with me when I call you. The rest wait for instructions. We're safe. We're going to help without making it worse. He keyed the bus radio with the same calm cadence he used to teach convoy drivers to live through ambushes. No bravado, only information that moves people. Control, bus 91. Multi-car pileup mid-spin southbound. Lanes 1 to 3 blocked. Bus 91 stable at the rail. No injuries on board. Requesting police, fire, medical. I'm establishing a safe corridor. The dispatcher heard at the practice spacing of words, the matter-of-fact structure, and began the clock on a city's response while Iden started the one thing panic can't compete with, a plan. He popped the door, pointed with an open palm rather than a jab, and, like gravity choosing a direction, people began to flow. You 3 orange triangles under the front seats. You in the blue jacket, fire extinguisher from that cabinet. Ma'am, call emergency services. Repeat my words on speaker so I can add details. And as they moved, he was already setting the order of operations he'd taught 100 times. Control your footprint, buy time, cut risks, build roles, and never let the second crash write the headline. Triangles went down at 50, 100, 150 feet behind the bus to turn chaos into a taper. A volunteer faced inbound traffic with both hands high, slow circles, human brake lights to bring heavy vehicles down before they crested the crown. On the shoulder, Iden found the delivery truck driver shaking, color lost to shock, and steady as a metronome, sat him on the curb with his back to a tire, got the hazards flashing and the parking brake set because breathing and brakes both needed rhythm. At the compact with white airbags sagging like tired lungs, he sniffed for fuel coolant, not gas, killed the ignition, and, with a glove and a short wrench from the bus kit, popped a battery cable so a stray spark didn't nominate itself for villain. A seatbelt in the back jammed around a crying toddler, and Iden sent a helper with the bus's orange window hammer, angled away from skin, 1 precise cut, 1 small howl, then relief and a blanket, because big rescues are made of small accuracies. Back on the bus, he broke the crowd into simple, memorable jobs: lookouts, helpers, comforters, because names tame panic. Lookouts watch the lanes and warn before a single foot drifted beyond the triangle line. Helpers worked only under his voice, 2 at a time, moving people and objects, not guesses. Comforters worked the bus interior, checking kids and elders, handing out water and the thin blankets transit keeps for cold nights and worse mornings. A woman in row 7 said, "I'm a nurse," and he handed her triage softly but completely. "You lead medical. We treat breathing, bleeding, broken in that order. Yellow tags are in the first aid kit. Use paper tape if you run out." And a task that had scared a dozen commuters became a protocol with a spine. The worst threat was the one coming down on them from above, the thing most crash scenes forget. Momentum. So when a semi crested the span fast, weight hunting a lane, Aiden's lookout raised both arms, broad arcs instead of frantic flapping. And the truck dropped gears, hazard lights shivering in the morning glare. Meanwhile, the bridge's mass mattered, so Iden redistributed his own. Front half of the passengers stayed seated to keep load forward and stable. Back half stepped onto the shoulder in a tight single file against the rail, phones down unless talking to dispatch. Chatter swapped for short, useful sentences. A crying hatchback driver blocked the shoulder lifeline, so Iden took the driver's window and guided her 3 feet right with mirrors only, 1 inch at a time, promising she was safe and proving it until the corridor ran clean from the bus door to the wreck. He taped a bright line around a fender edge at knee height, because small injuries are the tax panic pays, and he refused to let panic collect. The nurse waved him over to an elderly man wheezing gray-blue. Iden asked for an inhaler aloud, and a teenager produced his granddad's from a backpack. 2 measured puffs later, color returned and the boy looked at Aiden like someone had opened a door that wasn't supposed to exist, and Aiden nodded once as if to say this is what doors are. 4. Then a young man shouted fuel, and everyone's neck snapped toward a shimmering puddle under the jackknifed trailer, but Aiden crouched, sniffed, touched with a gloved finger radiator wash. Sweet not sharp no ignition risk, and he said it out loud so Fear could hear it die. Coolant, not gasoline. We're good. And half a dozen lungs released air they'd been hoarding. Every few minutes he keyed the radio with updates that mattered: number of vehicles, injuries counted, hazards neutralized, never swamping the channel with fear words. And when sirens finally crested the bridge 14 minutes after the first brake squeal, he gave the first engine a handoff any incident commander would want: clear shoulder from bus to point of impact, 1 asthma patient stabilized, 2 with airbag burns, 1 driver in shock, no visible fuel leaks, battery disabled on the compact, jackknife truck secured, bystanders controlled. The firefighter who took the brief looked at Aiden like he'd run a drill with him last week and asked if he was ex-military. Aiden just said, "I teach people to drive on bad days," and the firefighter grinned. "Today you taught a class," before peeling off to pull glass and metal off the road. Tow trucks worked their slow arithmetic. Sweeping crews made the bridge walkable again, and lanes reopened in coughing increments. Passengers returned to bus 91 quieter than they had left, half looking at the driver like they were seeing the second half of a coin, and when a man asked, almost apologetically, how he'd known exactly what to do, Aiden said the truest thing he knew: same as any route, you make a plan before you need it, then checked his mirrors, signaled left, and eased the bus forward. The cockpit of a city vehicle looking a lot like command when you put calm behind the wheel. Later, parked at the depot with the engine ticking into silence, he filled out the report in tidy block letters: time of incident, lane count, actions taken, items issued, then slipped a dog-eared index card back into his wallet, the one he'd carried for years, with 4 words printed in his own ink: stop, breathe, see, speak. He'd written those during a winter exercise when a trainee froze at a blind curve and forgot how to be a driver, and they'd saved more mornings than any medal could measure. He wasn't much for medals anyway, which is one reason he'd left the convoy world when the teaching satisfied him more than the travel did, trading sand for city dust, convoys for commuters, but keeping the same spine of habits: mirrors before motion, voice before hands, plan before panic. That night, bone-tired and clean at the kitchen table, he told the story like he always did: short, with the sugar gone from the edges, bridge crash, no serious injuries, nurse on board did great, responders fast, and his wife tapped the index card when he set the wallet down and said what she always said when the world asked him to be the person he never advertised: good card. Days later, an email trickled to the transit inbox from a passenger who'd ridden in the back of bus 91 and then, in a grocery store parking lot, watched a delivery cart roll off a curb toward a toddler. The passenger wrote that they heard Aiden's voice in their head and yelled lookouts, helpers, comforters at 3 strangers they'd never met. 1 stopped the cart, 1 scooped the kid, 1 found the mother with soft words and steady hands, and afterward they felt ridiculous for shouting job titles in a parking lot until they didn't, because ridiculous and useful often share a fence. Aiden read the email at the break room table and smiled the way a person does when they see a pattern repeat where it should: quiet satisfaction, no fireworks. Weeks after the bridge, a woman who'd sat in row 2 boarded again and paused longer than commuters usually do. She said she'd signed up for a basic first aid course because of the nurse on bus 91 and had swapped the playlist on her morning run for a habit of counting exits in every crowd to tiny decisions with weight beyond their size. And Aiden, who measured success in inches and seconds, said, "That's good work," because it was. This story isn't about a man who wanted attention. It's about a day that needed a calm center and got one from a driver who treated strangers like a team and fear like a task list. And if you're watching this on your own commute, listening to traffic breathe around you, take one thing with you from bus 91. Ordinary faces often carry extraordinary rehearsals, and when the moment comes, they won't shout, they'll steady the air like Aiden did. They'll name the work and make it move. If you've ever seen an ordinary person take a disaster and turn it into a plan, tell us your story in the comments. And if you believe calm saves lives, subscribe to Secret Warrior Stories, because the truth is simple and worth remembering. The world is full of quiet professionals sitting 1 seat away, and sometimes when the bridge locks up, the person at the wheel doesn't honk. They take command.